We're here today to talk about two recent officer-involved shootings, and just for a little context into both of them. One of them started in the Southeast Area Command, ended up in the Foothills dealing with the auto theft suspect. That individual was shot, injured, later released from the hospital and has been booked on his warrants. Deputy Commander Hartsock will get into more details of it. The second one was the one on Candelaria, where the offender is suspected of homicide at the hotel there on Candelaria near the freeway. Engaged in a shootout with police a little bit after that. Nobody was shot in that incident. That individual was taken into custody. And again, the Deputy Commander will get into details. But before we do that, I want Chief Medina to say a few words.
Just want to thank everybody for being here today, and we're going to be going over our last two officer-involved shootings. And earlier in the year I talked about this trend of officer-involved shootings. It's not just occurring here, but nationwide it seems to be like there's an increase. And I just want to say that once again you're going to see today part of our officers were in danger. We had officers that were fired upon. We had an individual who murdered a security guard. I mean, it was another representation of a uniform. Somebody trying to protect individuals, and it's unfortunate that this individual had such a tragic end to their life. So once again, we'll be able to see a highlight of how difficult it is for our law enforcement officers in today's climate, and hopefully that we could get beyond this, and we could bring a sense of safety to our officers, and hopefully they won't have to be facing this time and time again. So thank you for being here this afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Kyle Hartsock. I'm the Deputy Commander in our Criminal Investigations Division, which helps oversee our Multi-Agency Task Force, or MATF, which helps investigate officer-involved shootings. Its critical incident community briefing will provide you with some information of a person who fled from officers in a stolen vehicle, went inside a hotel, and when exiting and told to surrender and not drive away, an officer-involved shooting occurred. You're about to see relevant video footage and learn about other evidence and police procedures related to the case so that you can have a better understanding of what occurred. Based on what we know right now, the police department conducts very thorough criminal and use of force investigations, which typically require investigators to interview multiple witnesses, review hours of video footage, and analyze a significant amount of forensic evidence. We're still at the early stages of this investigation, which can often take several months to complete. Our understanding of the incident may change as this additional evidence is collected, analyzed, and reviewed. We also do not draw any conclusions about whether officers acted consistent with our policies and the law until all the facts are known and the investigation is complete. A word of caution: the images and video may be disturbing. When police officers use force to arrest a subject or defend against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch. In addition, there may be strong language by those shown in the video. The incident we're here to talk about today happened in the Foothills Area Command near Tramway and Central. The two officers that fired their weapons that day were Detectives Damian Lujan and Detective Jerry Arnold, who both work in sensitive investigative units, so we are not sharing their photos during this press briefing. Detective Lujan has been with the Albuquerque Police Department since 2007. At the time, he was assigned to the Gun Violence Suppression Team. He has been involved in 3 prior officer-involved shootings in 2011, 2019, and 2020. Detective Jerry Arnold got hired by the police department in 2013. He was currently assigned to the auto theft unit when the shooting occurred. He has no prior officer-involved shootings. Both detectives are back on duty in their original positions as of today. The person police shot that day was 46-year-old Shannon Candelaria, who appears to be a lifelong resident of Algodones, New Mexico. On April 12, 2022, about 9:45 p.m., patrol officers observed a stolen vehicle near Central and Pennsylvania Northeast. Officers turned on their lights and sirens and tried to pull the car over, but it fled. Officers turned their lights and sirens off, but were able to attach a Star Chase GPS dart to the car. With the help of our dispatch and auto theft detectives, we were able to track the car without pursuing the car through the city streets. The stolen vehicle at one point dropped a male passenger off, who we were able to interview. The passenger told us that the driver of the car was Shannon Candelaria. The stolen vehicle then drove into a motel near Tramway and Central, and the detectives observed the single occupant and driver, Shannon Candelaria, exit the car and enter inside the hotel lobby. Detectives and officers came into the parking lot, and while making a plan to arrest the subject if he walked back out, observed the driver exit the motel and start to walk towards the stolen car. An officer observed the subject put his hand in his pocket and pull out an unknown object in response from police to surrender. The male subject also began yelling obscenities at officers and stating, quote, "You're gonna have to shoot me." Detectives followed the subject as he approached the stolen car and appeared to want to enter that car to leave. Detective Lujan stated that he also observed the subject reach into his pocket and pull something small out that he believed was a small black handgun. The male then quickly extended his arm while yelling at Detective Lujan. Detective Lujan fired his weapon at the subject, striking him. Detective Arnold also fired his weapon, but it struck a vehicle, causing only property damage. This is video taken from the hotel. Just so you guys are aware, as you watch it, it does skip a minute here and several seconds on the second part to kind of speed it up for you. But if you look at the timestamp on the bottom, you can see it advance. What you're going to see is the stolen red car pull into a parking spot, the driver get out and walk towards the front of the hotel. The video is going to fast forward, and you'll see the person now walking back out from the front of the hotel back towards the car, and the officer-involved shooting will occur on video. We do also repeat the shooting part at the end, zoomed in, so you can get a closer look from this view of the shooting. There is no audio in this video. Here it is. This is the video from Detective Arnold, who again does fire his weapon.
Get your hands out your pockets! Get your hands out your pockets! Police, you're under arrest. You're being recorded. Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Hey, let me see your hands. I can't see what's in his hands. I think it's a knife. Albuquerque police, let me see your hands! And don't let him get in the car! Shit. Oh, shit. Hey, shots fired, shots fired.
This is the video from Detective Lujan, who does fire his weapon.
You guys on the west side of the motel, just stay there in case he runs back to his car. That way you have a sweatshirt.
Police, stop! Get on the ground now! Get on the ground!
Just talk to the hospital.
Get on the ground!
This is one of the crime scene photos we took showing the red stolen car, where it was parked, and the shooting took place right next to the driver's door of the red car. This is a photo showing the object that was in Shannon's hand when he was shot was a key fob. Attached to it was a red kind of metal locking keychain. Mr. Candelaria was transported to the hospital and did survive the shooting. He was booked into MDC last Friday, May 20th, for outstanding warrants for his arrest. Over the next several months, the police department will continue to investigate and analyze this incident. We will continue interviewing any new witnesses that come forward and complete any forensic tests. After the investigation is complete, our Force Review Board will forward the findings to the Superintendent of Police Reform to determine if this incident met the high standards of the Albuquerque Police Department. The MATF will forward their case to the District Attorney's Office, who will make any determination of criminal charges. We're going to do our second presentation here, and then we'll take questions at the end for both. Let me just switch this out. This next incident we're going to talk about was on March 29th, 2022 at 1520 Candelaria Road Northeast. This critical incident community briefing will provide you with information of a person who, after killing another person, ran from police, fired a gun at police, and was involved in an officer-involved shooting. Again, the same warnings as before. The incident we're here to talk about took place in the Valley Area Command. The two officers who fired their weapons this day were Sergeant Andrew Herpelsheimer and Officer Justin Collins. Sergeant Herpelsheimer has been with the police department since 2009. He has no prior officer-involved shootings, and his current assignment is the Valley Area Command. Officer Collins has been with the department since 2018. He has no prior officer-involved shootings. His current assignment was the Valley Area Command. Both officers are back on duty in their same assignments as of today. The subject who was involved in the shootout with us was 44-year-old Donovan Bookout, who appears to be a lifelong resident of Albuquerque. On March 29th, 2022, around 3:12 a.m., officers on patrol were flagged down at the Ambassador Inn Hotel at 1520 Candelaria Road Northeast and found that a security guard, Heath Mora, had been murdered while on duty. The hotel did have surveillance video. The video does capture this incident. Mr. Mora would die on scene. As more officers started to arrive in the area, they observed a male, later identified as Donovan Bookout, in the process of carjacking a person for their truck right nearby the hotel. As police tried to stop that vehicle, the vehicle fled and struck a police unit. The vehicle continued to drive. Officers gave commands for the driver to surrender, which he did not. The vehicle then fled west to Broadway Boulevard, made a U-turn, and came back east on Candelaria. It then came to a stop for several minutes. Officers again gave commands for the driver to surrender. The driver continued to rev the engine and was trying to put the truck into gear, but could not. He did not turn the car off, he did not exit, he did not surrender. The vehicle suddenly accelerated eastbound and turned into an empty business driveway. The subject, Donovan Bookout, then exited the truck armed with a pistol and immediately began to shooting at officers who were still in their vehicles as they were pulling up. Officer Collins and Sergeant Herpelsheimer both fired back at Donovan. No one was struck by any bullets. Donovan Bookout then dropped the gun and laid flat on the ground, surrendering. During his arrest, a silver handgun was observed on the ground next to him. This is the lapel video from Officer Collins that night, who did fire his weapon. It starts right after the carjacking has occurred, and it's going to run for about 5 minutes all the way up to the shooting. And again, there's no audio at the beginning because he hasn't hit the button to activate his camera yet.
Lift your hands! Lift your hands! Stop your hands! Lift your hands! Lift your hands! Lift your hands! Stop the truck! Let me see your hands! You got a gun. Let me see your hands! Albuquerque, please! He hasn't... Step out of the vehicle! Albuquerque, please! Step out of the vehicle now! Step out of the vehicle now! Step out of the vehicle now! Step out of the vehicle! One yard! Albuquerque, please! Let me see your hands! Put your hands up now! Put your hands up! Put your hands up! Face away from me!
Another officer who did not fire captured part of that car stop that we were just watching, but more clearly shows the actions of the driver during it. Here's a short clip of that.
Show your ass! I got him if he drove. He's moving. Slowly on him. I can't see his hands. 7 out. Hands in the air. Put your hands in the air. I'm cooking police department. Put your hands in the air. I have a shot. Hands in the air. I got driver.
This is the video from Sergeant Herpelsheimer, who does fire his weapon. He arrives on scene right before the truck takes off, just to get the timing set up for you.
I got driver.
Going eastbound, Candelaria. Eastbound.
Check the car, check the car! Don't pass the car, I'm holding on him! Back off, back off, back off! Get cover, get cover! Hey, do we have any outstanding suspects? Do we have any suspects outstanding? Hey, suspect, give us your hands! Put your hands out now! Let me see your hands! Put your hands out now! Hey, all 34's up and accounted for. Everybody check themselves. That was over your own new shooting. What's up to you, Sergeant? You think you're fine? You think yourself? guys see the gun? Real quick, was there any outstanding? Nobody else, okay. We'll go with that plan, we're gonna red blocker. Let me know when you guys are ready. We have two guys ready. You guys ready? Do not move. Put him in cuffs. Put him in cuffs.
Another officer who did not fire has a better view as they approach the suspect. You can see the firearm laying on the ground. Here's that video. This is surveillance video from a private business right in that driveway where the shooting's going to take place. It much better captures the actual shooting event from Mr. Bookout. The same business had another camera angle that also captures it. Here that is. This is a crime scene photo of the truck that was carjacked by Mr. Bookout and crashed into one of our police units, showing the damage from the crash when it hit the unit. This is a photograph of the police unit that was crashed into, and again, this happened on Pan American right as this whole thing really started to start off. This photo shows one of the bullets that Mr. Bookout fired struck one of the police units in the bottom, and also a second unit. So two different police cars took rounds from Mr. Bookout as he fired back. This is a photo showing the firearm that Mr. Bookout used during the shooting. It was recovered right next to him, as you saw when he got arrested. At the time of this incident, the gun had not been reported stolen. Donovan Bookout was not shot that day, nor was any officer. He was booked in a jail, and on April 11th, 2022, a grand jury in Bernalillo County indicted Mr. Bookout for first-degree murder, armed robbery, aggravated assault upon a peace officer, aggravated battery upon a peace officer, shooting at or from a motor vehicle, criminal damage to property, shooting at a dwelling, and felon in possession of a firearm. He is still currently being held in jail for these charges. This case is still under an open criminal and administrative investigation. And with that, we'll take any questions you guys might have. Yes, sir.
In regards to the firearm that Bookout had, you said at the time it was reported stolen. Do we know how we got that firearm? Was it reported stolen?
We are still looking into that. We do have some information on it, but it's still under investigation. But it had not been reported stolen, though, for sure.
Connected to any other crimes?
No. Yes, sir.
In the first incident, Mr. Candelaria, were there any weapons found on his person, or was it only the keys?
No weapons were found on him.
What made the officers feel like that was a threat? Like, what made them fire?
On the first one is what you're talking about?
Sorry, yes, the first one.
The officer said in a statement he thought that he had pulled a black handgun out of his pocket, and that's what he had in his hand.
But it's actually the keys.
It was the key fob with a red metal locking keychain on it, yes.
Was he staying at that motel?
I think that's still under investigation. We don't know for sure if he was.
Was he charged with anything, with receiving, transferring a stolen motor vehicle, or assault on a police officer?
That part of the investigation is still under investigation. We're working with the district attorney's office on it, but we haven't turned the case over to him yet. He had warrants for his arrest, so he was just simply booked on the warrants for right now. Yes, sir.
Following up on that, just kind of the criminal history between both the suspects in the case, can you just talk a little bit about that, the warrants that were out for him?
Both subjects are not strangers to the criminal justice system. Mr. Bookout has been charged with a shooting in the past. From court records, there might be mental competency issues going on, according to the courts. Mr. Candelaria has many arrests over the years. I don't have them all in front of me right now, but you should be able to find those, I would say, in Odyssey. Yep.
I'm sorry, I just want to go back to the earlier thing. So the investigation is still ongoing and has not yet been turned over to the DA's office. Is that correct?
Over criminal liability of Mr. Candelaria, yeah, that's still an open investigation, but he is in jail.
Was that the car, that red car, that was a stolen car?
Yes, that was stolen. Yes, sir.
And I just wanted to clarify, so Bookout wasn't shot or anything, because in the surveillance video, it looks like he kind of goes down, but was that?
Totally looks like he goes down like he's shot, but he was not struck by any bullets, did not need any medical attention at all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I have a question for the chief. So the one involving Candelaria on April 12th, that's now the second incident this year where an offender has not been armed with a gun. Why do you think that is?
You know, there could be a variety of reasons. I mean, we got to remember that officers make quick decisions. And, you know, we got to remember that there's two types of investigations going on right now. There's going to be a criminal investigation which determines if the officer's actions were legal and if they were authorized what they would do. And that takes its own independent course through, you know, MATF presenting the case over to the DA's. Obviously, we're aware that the DA's office has a special prosecutor. But then we have the administrative investigation. And I think one of the successes from the Department of Justice and our settlement agreement is these Force Review Board, it doesn't just look whether the officer was justified or wasn't justified. It looks to see if there's something we could do different in terms of training, in terms of tactics, in terms of you know, policies where we could make changes to help avoid some of these situations. So as these two cases go forward on that administrative side, I'm hoping that you know, something comes about or some kind of recommendation comes about as how we deal with these situations, because I think it's something that law enforcement has always dealt with. You know, officers have very little reaction time when something occurs, and you know, we heard Deputy Chief Hartsock talk about, you know, this individual, the officer thought they were pulling out the black handgun. So those are all the things that'll be taken into consideration, and you know, and we will look to see how we could change this in the future, or how we could train officers for these situations. And sometimes it's not a matter of changing the exact outcome at that moment. Sometimes it's a matter of how can we have different tactics that would prevent us from having to make those quicker decisions. So it'll be thoroughly looked through, and hopefully we'll have some answers in the near future of why this is occurring and if there's something we could do to prepare our officers for these types of situations.
As chief, is there anything that you can think of?
You know, one of the things I think about is it's always good for us to slow things down, for us to use the establishment of perimeters. And this has gone back to when I was a deputy chief and I sat on the Force Review Board. The more we slow things down, the more we prevent individuals from leaving locations, and the more we could take our time to take these people into custody, the more success we're going to be. Obviously, you know, this is a situation where, you know, there was probably the anticipation is this person go back into the car and we're going to be involved in, you know, a second follow of this individual, and are they going to leave? So, you know, we have advanced technology over the years. I think our auto theft unit now has devices where they could set up and deflate tires prior to the car even moving. You know, or set them up so that once the car starts moving, they're used. So yeah, it's a matter of looking at technology. We are looking at other technology in terms of also ways to stop pursuing vehicles. So breaking this down is going to be key, and for us being able to find specifics on how we could change that outcome.
Were there other civilians around at the motel? Other people in the parking lot? Or?
Do you know, Kyle?
There was one woman, you can see her in the video right as she far as they come out of the breezeway, she is right there. That's the only one that, I think we viewed on this preliminary part of the investigation that's there.
Chief, do you think because we are seeing a rise in OIS, that when officers are out there and they see someone reach for something, there is a tendency to think that it is a gun because we are seeing this trend?
There is no doubt that officers, are in fear. And I don't think it's just in the city of Albuquerque. I think it's nationwide. We are seeing violence towards officers at a rate we haven't seen before. I know the sheriff has mentioned it, and New Mexico State Police Chief has mentioned it. Like in the metro area, we have had a number of officer-involved shootings. When we started to see this increase and I started to see the national trend, we actually released on Chief's Corner, one of the weeks we spoke about it, is we spoke about the increase in violence in officers, and we reminded them that, we don't want to get to the point where we're paranoid. We want to rely on our training. We have to make good decisions. And I think that we have to let this take its administrative course. I think we owe it to the officers to see what comes out the other end, because our officers are making split-second decisions. And the one thing I want to touch upon that is right now we're seeing a trend where nationwide there's difficulties in recruiting and retaining police officers. This isn't something that's just specific to the city of Albuquerque, but one of the fears that a lot of officers who are leaving the profession are saying is we are involved in incidents, judgment is passed, and people slow down video and they watch it at super slow motion 50 times before they pass judgment whether our actions were appropriate or not. And we have to be very cautious of that, let these cases take their course, review this as a totality and see, was there really a way to prevent this? And if there was, how could it be prevented? And this goes right back to what I said. Sometimes it's not preventing the situation as it's occurring real time with that person, but it's employing new tactics or bringing new technology in to avoid us being involved in those quick second decisions.
And then in the second incident, I'm just curious, did the officers know that Mr. Bookout had just committed a homicide prior to them pursuing him? Or were they not aware?
Yes, the officers were aware that a homicide had occurred and that they were pursuing an individual who was wanted for murder.
How close were the bullets that Mr. Bookout fired to hitting the officers? You showed the bullet hole in the car. Where was that?
Everything's moving, but both were on the driver's side lower door area, so they were very close. And you can hear in the video as they're pulling up, the rounds are already being fired at them as they're still seated in a pretty vulnerable position.
Chief, talking about that homicide, was that just a completely random incident? On this surveillance video, you can see Bookout.
As far as we know, it's a random incident. And that homicide right there kind of really brings to light some of what we're seeing. When we talk about our homicide rates and how they've increased, one of the things that I'm seeing and that I think our investigators are seeing is like the impact of mental health and mental illness in some of our homicides that we haven't seen in the past. And I think that, we got to find, or someday they're going to find there's a correlation with what occurred with the pandemic and how people are responding to situations in today's day and age. And I still think we need to invest in our mental health system. We talked about it last time. We had 2 incidents on the last shootings where, mental health was an impact in those shootings. Now we have homicides, if you look at it. I mean, we have a homicide with an individual who has a history of mental health. And I think we need to work as a community and we need to figure out how are we going to deal with these individuals. It's not just we're going to erase it and you get a free pass. There has to be some kind of mandated programs that individuals are put into where they're monitored and we're assuring the community that they're safe. This person had numerous contacts with law enforcement. Firearms had been recovered from this individual prior to this murder. And we have a security guard who lost their life because in ways the system isn't set up for us to deal with these individuals. And I challenge our legislators, I challenge our community leaders in these fields. How are we going to find common sense solutions of how we can deal with these individuals? And for far too long, these people like with mental illness are deemed incompetent to stand trial, but it ends there, and there's not just this constant monitoring and how we're going to create a life plan for these individuals. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for our community to really look to see how we're going to prevent individuals from committing a horrendous crime like this, but also living a productive life and being safe for others, but safe for themselves.